All right, are you ready to unlock some serious potential? Because today we are going deep, deep into Napoleon Hill's The Law of Success. You guys have sent us some fascinating excerpts, and trust me, this book, it's a classic for a reason. It's like a blueprint, I think, for achieving anything you set your mind to.
Yeah. And Hill didn't just pull this out of thin air.
Yeah.
He spent over 20 years studying, researching the habits and mindsets of like over 100 wildly successful people. I mean, we're talking titans of industry.
Yeah.
We're talking Henry Ford, we're talking Andrew Carnegie.
Right. Like he wasn't just having tea and crumpets with these people. He was trying to like extract the very essence of what made these people tick. And he even uses this really interesting analogy of the Calumet copper mine, this massive copper deposit that people literally walked over for years without realizing its value. And Hill's point is that opportunity is often it's right under our noses, but we need the right mindset to actually see it. So think about that for a second. Are you walking over any copper mines in your own life?
And that's where his 15 laws of success come in. They're like, a treasure map guiding you towards those hidden opportunities.
Yeah, and these aren't like your typical vague self-help platitudes either. One of them is self-control, and Hill calls this like it's the balance wheel for enthusiasm.
Yeah, and it's so interesting how he frames it, right? Because it's not about like squashing your passion, but rather harnessing it and directing it like a powerful force towards your goals. It's
Yeah.
it's like imagine a race car driver. They have to control that raw power to stay on the track and ultimately, win the race. And it's the same, I think, with enthusiasm. Without self-control, it can actually spin you out of control.
Oh, I like that analogy. It's not about having passion, it's about mastering it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And another law that really stood out to me, I think, is the habit of doing more than paid for. Hill argues that by consistently exceeding expectations, you actually trigger like a snowball effect of success.
Okay, unpack that for us a little bit. What do you mean by snowball effect?
He calls it the law of increasing returns. And, when you consistently go above and beyond, you become indispensable. People notice opportunities, they start opening up, and you kind of naturally rise, to positions of leadership. It's almost like you're setting a higher standard and you're attracting success, I think, as a result. Have you ever noticed that, happening in your own life?
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. But there have definitely been times when going the extra mile has opened up doors I never expected. It's like, putting more good energy out into the world and having it come back to you multiplied.
Precisely. And then there's the pleasing personality, which Hill describes. It's like the crowbar that helps you move mountains and win people over to your side.
Yeah.
And it's not just about being nice. It's about cultivating a genuine charisma and connecting with people on a deeper level.
Yeah, I think that's so relevant today, especially with all the emphasis on building relationships and influence. It's not enough to just have great ideas. You need to be able to communicate them effectively and really, really connect with people authentically.
Absolutely. But, Hill doesn't stop at just the practical advice. He actually goes deeper, exploring these unseen forces that are shaping success, like the power of the mind itself. And he even draws these parallels between the physical world and the realm of thoughts. So, for example, he talks about how matter is actually energy in a constant state of vibration, even our thoughts.
Okay, whoa, that's getting a little that's getting a little mind-bending. So you're saying our thoughts are like tiny vibrations like zipping around the universe?
Yeah, yeah, that's what Hill believed. He even goes as far as to say that the boundless space of the whole universe is a mental library.
Wait, a mental library. I'm trying to picture like shelves upon shelves of thoughts floating out in space. What does that even mean?
Yeah, yeah. It is a very powerful image, isn't it? What he's suggesting is that the human brain isn't just a transmitter of thoughts, but it's also a receiver. And we're constantly picking up on these vibrations from the world around us, from other people's thoughts, even from like the collective knowledge of humanity.
So we're all tapped into this massive invisible network of ideas. That's incredible.
Exactly, exactly. And Hill believes that accessing this mental library is crucial, for building self-confidence and ultimately achieving success. And he explores this a lot further in his writings on self-confidence, which I think, we'll get to a little bit later. But first we have to talk about one of the most, I think, powerful concepts in Hill's work, the mastermind.
Okay, let's unlock the secrets of this mastermind. What is it exactly?
So the mastermind, it's about harnessing the power of synergy. It's the idea that when brilliant minds, they come together in perfect harmony. They create a force far greater than the sum of their individual abilities. Think about a perfectly synchronized rowing team, right? Each individual is strong and capable, but when they row in unison with perfect timing, perfect coordination, they generate incredible power, incredible speed.
So it's not just about being in a room with, a bunch of smart people. It's about a certain kind of connection and collaboration.
Yes, it's about aligning your minds and hearts, towards a common goal. And he provides some very compelling examples of the mastermind, in action. He talks about a group that he calls the Big Six. And this is a group of millionaires that achieved extraordinary success through their shared vision and their unwavering support for each other.
That makes me wonder, is there a formula like for creating this kind of synergy, or is it something that just kind of happens organically?
Yeah, that's a good question. Hill actually does provide a framework for building a mastermind, which I think we can delve into a little bit further later on. But he stresses it's not just about gathering, a group of intelligent people. It's about finding individuals who share your values, who complement your strengths, and who are genuinely committed to supporting your vision.
So it's about finding the right people and then creating the right environment for collaboration.
Exactly. And he highlights this beautifully with a story about a man who was told, actually by a college president, that his land was worthless. But using readily available resources, and the power of creative collaboration, he turned that same land into a thriving tourist destination. I mean, can you imagine being told your land is worthless and then turning it into a profitable, venture?
Talk about turning lemons into lemonade. It really highlights the power of the mastermind to unlock potential that others might completely miss.
And remember those giants of industry, that we talked about earlier, Ford and Carnegie.
Right. The titans who built empires.
Yeah. And Hill specifically attributed their success to this principle of the mastermind. So Carnegie, for example, he actually knew very little about steel production, but he built a steel empire. And he built it by surrounding himself with experts, right, and orchestrating, their efforts. He was like the conductor of an orchestra, but of brilliant minds.
It's amazing how someone who isn't even an expert in a particular field can achieve such remarkable success just by leveraging, the collective genius of others. It makes you wonder, could you create a mastermind, in your own life?
That's a powerful question, and I think it's one that we should all be asking ourselves, because Hill believed that this principle, it's accessible to anyone who understands it. Yeah. But before you rush out to assemble your dream team, we need to address another, I think, crucial aspect of Hill's, philosophy: conquering fear.
Okay, fear. Let's be honest. Who isn't battling some kind of fear in their life?
Right. And fear, it is a universal human experience. But Hill believed that it was one of the biggest obstacles to success. And he actually identified six basic fears that hold people back: poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death.
Wow, it feels like he's covered all the bases there. But did he say which one he considered, like the most paralyzing?
He does delve into each fear, in detail. Yeah. But one that's incredibly relevant today, and I think it might resonate with you, is the fear of criticism, especially in this age of social media where everyone has a platform to judge and critique. Right. You can feel like you're constantly under a microscope, right? Yeah. Afraid to even put yourself out there for fear of being torn down.
Oh, I feel that. It's so easy to get caught up in what other people think, especially when those opinions are being amplified online.
Right. And Hill actually shares a rather, amusing anecdote about women in hats, just to kind of illustrate this point, And he points out that, clothing manufacturers, they actually exploit this fear of criticism, to drive sales. They're constantly changing styles, making women feel pressured to buy the latest trends, just to avoid, being judged for wearing outdated clothing.
Okay, that's both funny and a little unsettling. It's like they're preying on our insecurities to sell us things we don't even need.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the good news. Hill doesn't just leave us with the diagnosis, of our fears. He insists that we can overcome them. He was adamant that these fears are not inherent flaws, but
Yeah.
rather learned behaviors.
Hmm.
And they're often inherited through, you know, social conditioning. It's like we've been programmed to be afraid,
Yeah.
but we have the power to reprogram ourselves.
That's a huge relief. So it's not a life sentence. It's more like a bad habit we can break.
Precisely, precisely.
Yeah.
And he does provide a roadmap, in later lessons for how to break free from these fears. But before we dive into that, it's important, I think, to understand that conquering fear it's only half the battle.
Hmm.
Hill also emphasizes the importance of cultivating its opposite, self-confidence.
Ah, self-confidence. It sounds so simple, yet it can feel so elusive. But why did Hill believe it was so essential for success?
Well, he calls it the like the positive charge for the mind.
Hmm.
Stating that it's absolutely essential for salesmanship and any kind of achievement, really. Think about it. When you believe in yourself, you radiate a certain energy that draws people in. You're more likely to take risks, to persevere through, challenges, to even inspire others to follow your lead.
Yeah, I can definitely see how believing in yourself would give you an edge in any situation. But how do you actually build self-confidence? Is it something you're born with, or can it be developed?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. Hill believed that self-confidence is a skill. You
Yep.
know, it's something that you can cultivate. You can cultivate through practice and through experience. And he backs this up with some remarkable stories from his own research. So, for example, he tells the story of a man, a literal tramp who was, literally on the verge of giving up on life.
Yeah.
But then he stumbled upon Hill's book on self-confidence, and it completely changed his trajectory. He went from feeling completely hopeless to actually becoming the president, of a major company.
Okay, that's incredible. It's like that book gave him like the mental tools he needed to turn his whole life around.
Exactly. And it's not just a one-off story either.
Hmm.
Hill also shares the story of a school teacher who had, she had this sudden aha moment, while she was filling out a self-analysis chart. And that moment of clarity, ignited her self-belief, and it led her to a successful writing career.
So it's almost like these turning points, these moments where self-confidence just clicks into place. It can unlock hidden potential.
Precisely. And, while those aha moments, they can be incredibly powerful, Hill believed that we don't have to wait for them to happen.
Mm.
We can actively cultivate self-confidence by, aligning our actions with a clear vision for our lives.
Which brings us to Hill's emphasis on having a definite chief aim in life. He seemed incredibly passionate about this idea.
He truly believed that success hinges on having this burning desire, this crystal clear objective that guides every decision you make. And he emphasizes, this aim. It should be concrete, it should be specific, and it should be deeply meaningful, to you.
So not just I want to be successful, but something more tangible, more aligned with your values and your aspirations.
Exactly. And he uses these inspiring examples to illustrate this principle. He talks about Statler, the hotel magnate, whose unwavering focus on providing home-like hotel service led to, immense wealth, and a lasting legacy. It wasn't just about, making money. It was about, creating a certain experience for his guests.
It's amazing how a seemingly simple goal can become so powerful when it's pursued, with that unwavering focus.
Right. And then there's the story of Edwin C. Barnes, who became fixated on the idea of selling Edison dictating machines.
Yeah.
And this burning desire, it propelled him to overcome incredible obstacles and, ultimately achieve, great success. It allowed him to retire early, comfortably.
Yeah.
It's like he willed it into being just through sheer determination.
Oh, I love those. I love those stories because they show that success isn't just about, luck or talent. It's about choosing a direction and going after it, with everything you've got. It reminds me of that quote by Hill, a man with a definite chief aim. He starts through a crowd, everybody stands aside and makes a way for him, It's
Yeah.
like that clarity of purpose creates its own momentum,
Sure.
drawing people and resources towards it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's like the universe conspires, conspires to help those who know exactly what they want. But, having a goal, it's only half the battle, right?
Yeah.
Hill also stresses the importance of, taking action.
Right, right. You can't just sit around and wish for things to happen. You have to roll up your sleeves and make it happen.
Exactly, exactly. And he provides detailed instructions for turning your definite chief aim into a reality. He suggests forming, he calls it a friendly alliance. It's a group of trusted allies who will encourage and support you on your journey. It's like having your own personal cheerleading squad pushing you forward, when you feel like giving up.
That's such a great idea. So you share your goal with this inner circle, for support, but he also advises keeping it secret from naysayers, right?
Yes, yes. He cautions against revealing your ambitions to those who might discourage you. He believes negativity can be incredibly draining,
Mhm.
especially in the early stages, of pursuing a big goal. It's like protecting that fragile seedling of an idea, until it's strong enough to withstand the elements.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. It's so easy to let other people's doubts, seep into your own mind.
Exactly. It's about creating a positive and a supportive environment, for your dreams to flourish.
Yeah.
Now, while having a definite aim and taking action are crucial, Hill also remind us that there's another ingredient in the success recipe, imagination.
Okay. This is where things start to get a little mystical for me. How does imagination fit into all of this?
He calls imagination the workshop of the soul. It's the place where thoughts are transformed into, tangible realities. And he uses some incredibly evocative, examples, to illustrate this. He talks about how a pile of bricks, it's just a pile of bricks until an architect's imagination turns it into, a magnificent mansion. It's like that spark of vision that elevates the raw materials into something beautiful and functional.
So it's like seeing the potential in something before it even exists.
Precisely. And he also tells this story of a ramshackle barn that was transformed into a profitable auto supply station.
Yeah.
And it was all, through this blend of imagination, and strategic investment.
It's like he's saying we all have this power. We all have this power to create something valuable, to shape our reality if we dare to imagine it first. But dreaming alone isn't enough, is it?
You're right. You're right. Imagination without action it's just a daydream.
Yeah.
And he was all about turning those dreams into tangible realities.
Which brings us back to action, and his belief in going the extra mile, and doing more than what's expected. He seemed to really believe this was crucial for achieving any kind of lasting success.
Yeah, he did. He did. He believed that going above and beyond, it isn't just about, impressing your boss or getting ahead, but, it's a fundamental principle for unlocking what he calls the law of increasing returns.
It's like putting more energy into the universe and then having that energy come back to you multiplied.
Exactly, exactly. And he shares a very personal story from his own life to illustrate this. He talks about, his struggles to promote his law of success philosophy while choosing to forego a steady salary.
Mm.
And he was supported by the faith of friends like Edwin C. Barnes, who believed in his vision even when things were tough.
It's a testament, I think, to the power of believing in yourself and your mission, you know, even when others might doubt you.
Absolutely. And during this challenging time, Hill actually received some incredibly affirming words from a wise mentor.
Oh, I love his stories about mentors. They always offer such profound wisdom. What did this mentor say?
Well, he told Hill, "You're not the only man who has had to sacrifice immediate monetary remuneration for the sake of gathering knowledge. For in truth, your experience has been that of every philosopher from the time of Socrates down to the present."
Wow, that's beautiful. It's like he's saying that true growth often requires us to prioritize long-term, long-term vision over short-term comfort. It's about, playing the long game and trusting that the rewards will come in due time.
Precisely, precisely. And this principle of going the extra mile,
Hmm.
it applies, to all areas of life, not just to, grand ambitions. Even small acts of service, done consistently, they can create a ripple effect,
Yeah.
of positive energy
Yeah.
that ultimately comes back to you. Think about it. Where in your own life could you apply this principle?
That's a great question to ponder. I'm starting to realize that success as Hill defines it isn't just about achieving, material wealth or climbing the corporate ladder, but it's about becoming the best version of yourself and contributing to the world in a meaningful way.
You're getting it.
Yeah.
And this idea of going the extra mile, it's closely intertwined with another one of Phil's, key principles, enthusiasm. He
Yeah.
believed that enthusiasm is contagious and absolutely essential for influencing others.
Okay, enthusiasm. I can definitely get behind that. But how did he describe its role in success?
He believed that enthusiasm is like a magnet. It draws people in, and it inspires them to action. And he contrasted it with a lackluster,
Yeah.
approach,
Yeah.
which he said actually repels people. It's like the difference between, a flickering candle and a roaring fire.
Yeah.
Which one are you more drawn to?
Definitely the roaring fire. It's
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
energy and passion create a warmth that makes you, want to get closer.
Exactly, exactly. And he tells this memorable story about a skillful saleswoman who completely disarmed him. Using a genuine smile, a warm handshake, and a tactful approach to conversation.
She sounds like a master of her craft. What was her secret?
She was a master of subtle suggestion, but more importantly, she exuded this infectious enthusiasm. That made Hill feel like he was doing her a favor.
Yeah.
By buying her magazines. He completely turned the tables, on him.
That's incredible. It sounds like she was using her enthusiasm to amplify the power of suggestion.
Exactly. Hill repeatedly, emphasizes that enthusiasm and suggestion they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm is like the fuel,
Yeah.
that powers the engine, of suggestion, making it far more persuasive and impactful.
So it's not just about being excited. It's about channeling that excitement to inspire and to influence others. And this applies to so much more than just, sales, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's relevant to any situation where you're trying to communicate an idea, you're trying to persuade someone, or even just, create a positive connection. Think about your own experiences. Have you ever noticed, how much more receptive you are, to someone who's genuinely enthusiastic?
Absolutely. It's like their passion makes you want to lean in and listen.
Exactly. Now, while enthusiasm can be a very powerful tool, Hill also cautioned against using it manipulatively. He stressed the importance of authenticity and a genuine belief in what you're promoting.
So it's not about, faking excitement. It's about tapping into something you truly, truly care about and letting that passion shine through.
Precisely, because people can feel the difference. They can sense when someone is genuinely passionate about something, and it makes all the difference in the world.
This is making me think, about how I show up in my own interactions. Am I bringing enough enthusiasm to the table? Am I inspiring? Yeah, am I inspiring those around me?
Yeah, those are great questions to ask yourself. And while you're pondering that, let's dive into another crucial element of Hill's, philosophy, and that is accurate thinking.
Okay. Accurate thinking. That sounds pretty straightforward. But I'm guessing Hill had a more nuanced perspective on it.
Of course. Of course,
Yeah.
he defined accurate thinking as more than just gathering information, you know. It's about using all the powers of your mind to process that information, you know.
Yeah.
Effectively critically evaluating it
Oh.
and ultimately using it to create something new.
So it's not just about being intelligent. It's about using your intelligence in a strategic and a purposeful, way.
Exactly. Hill believed that many people they fall into the trap of accepting information at face value without really questioning it or considering its implications.
Yeah.
It's like reading a headline and forming an opinion without delving deeper into the story.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can definitely relate to that. It's so easy to get swept up, in the information overload and just passively, absorb whatever's being thrown at you.
Especially in today's world. And Hill's advice on accurate thinking is more relevant than ever. He emphasized emphasized the importance of developing a discerning mind, one that can sift through the noise and identify what's truly valuable. It's like becoming your own personal fact checker and editor.
So it's about being selective with the information you consume, and then critically analyzing it before you form an opinion.
Exactly. And this ability to think accurately, it's closely tied to self-control, which we discussed, a little bit earlier. It requires the discipline. It requires the discipline to pause, to reflect, and to challenge your own assumptions before blindly accepting something as truth.
Wow, I'm starting to see how interconnected all these principles are. They're like pieces of a puzzle that fit together to create this complete picture of success. It's not just about achieving one specific goal. It's about developing a mindset and a set of habits that will lead to success in all areas of life.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And he'll believe that anyone can develop this mindset regardless of their background or their circumstances. He saw success as a matter of understanding and applying specific laws, not of luck or privilege.
That's incredibly empowering. But what about the obstacles to accurate thinking? What are some of the things we need to watch out for?
Yeah. Hill identified a number of mental traps that can hinder our ability, to think clearly and effectively.
Yeah.
And one of the most insidious, he argued, was intolerance.
Intolerance. How does that relate to accurate thinking?
Well, he believed that intolerance closes the mind,
Yeah.
pushing reason, logic, and facts into the background. It's like wearing blinders that prevent you from, seeing the full picture.
Yeah, I can definitely see how, clinging to rigid beliefs, especially about people who are different from us, could prevent you from seeing things clearly.
Exactly. And he'll argue that intolerance often goes hand in hand with another mental trap.
Okay, I'm ready to delve deeper into this whole idea of influencing, the subconscious mind. We left off, I think, with that really intriguing image of planting seeds and watching them grow.
Yeah, that's a great place to pick up. He believed that our subconscious mind is like it's like fertile ground,
Yeah.
constantly absorbing suggestions, both from ourselves and the world around us.
So how do we ensure that we're planting like the right seeds, the ones that will, grow into the kind of life, that we desire?
Well, Hill believed the key lies in consistent focused, suggestion. Think about like tending a garden. You wouldn't just, scatter seeds randomly and hope for the best, right? You'd carefully select the seeds, you want to grow, plant them in fertile soil, water them regularly, and protect them from weeds.
So our thoughts are like seeds, and our subconscious mind is the garden.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And just like a gardener has to be mindful of the conditions that they create for their plants. We have to be mindful of the suggestions that we're feeding our, subconscious mind. And Hill emphasizes, the importance of both auto-suggestion, which is self-suggestion, and the suggestions that we receive from others.
Okay, so we have to be mindful. We have to be mindful of both our own thoughts and the influences we allow, into our lives.
Yeah.
But how do we actually, plant those positive suggestions in a way that makes them stick?
Yeah, yeah. He provides very specific, instructions for this. He recommends writing down a clear, concise statement of your definite chief aim, that burning desire that fuels your ambitions.
So we're not just talking about like, a vague notion, but a concrete, a concrete written declaration of what we want to achieve.
Exactly. There's power, there's power in putting it in writing. It makes it real, makes it tangible. And he then suggests, reading this statement aloud twice a day, once in the morning, once at night, with full emotion and belief.
It sounds almost like a ritual, like a way to kind of imprint that desire onto the subconscious mind.
Precisely. And as you read it, he encourages you to visualize yourself already in possession of the object of your desire. Don't just think it, feel it, experience the emotions that you would feel if you had already achieved your goal.
So it's about creating this vivid mental picture, feeling the joy, the satisfaction, the sense of accomplishment.
Exactly. He'll believe that the subconscious mind, it doesn't distinguish between, imagination and reality. So by consistently visualizing our desired outcome, we're essentially programming it to manifest in our lives.
Okay, this is starting to sound a little bit like magic, but but is there any evidence? Is there any evidence that this actually works?
Well, countless successful people, throughout history, they've attributed their achievements, to the power of visualization and positive, self-suggestion. It's not just a new age concept. It's a practice that's been used for centuries.
So it's not just Hill's theory. It's a technique that's been proven effective, time and time again.
Precisely. And even modern science is beginning to understand the powerful connection between our thoughts, our beliefs, and our physical our physical reality.
This makes me think about all the times, that I've doubted myself, all those limiting beliefs that have held me back. What if I've been inadvertently, planting the wrong seeds in my subconscious mind?
It's a possibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
We all have limiting beliefs that we picked up along the way. But the good news is we can reprogram our subconscious mind with more empowering suggestions. It's like weeding out the negative thoughts and planting positive ones in their place.
Okay. I'm ready to start. Weeding.
Yeah.
But how do we overcome those deeply ingrained, patterns of thought?
Well, it takes time. And consistent effort. He compares it to building a muscle.
Yeah.
You can't just lift a heavy weight once and expect to see results. It takes repetition. It takes dedication to strengthen that muscle.
So cultivating a successful mindset is like a workout for the subconscious mind.
Exactly. And just like with any workout, there will be challenges, there will be setbacks. And he believed that perseverance is essential. It's about pushing through those difficult moments and never giving up on your dreams.
That brings us to another important concept from Hill's work, the idea that failure is often a stepping stone to success. He saw it as a valuable teacher, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He'll believe that failure is not the opposite of success, but it's a crucial part of the journey.
Mhm.
He saw it as feedback,
Yeah.
providing valuable lessons that can help us to refine our approach and ultimately achieve our goals.
That's such a reframing perspective.
Yeah.
It's like those setbacks, those moments where we stumble
Thanks.
actually contain these valuable insights that can propel us forward.
Precisely, and Hill emphasizes the importance of analyzing our mistakes,
Hmm.
and extracting the wisdom that they hold. And he suggests asking ourselves three key questions after every setback.
Okay. I'm taking notes. What are the questions?
Okay, so first, what caused the failure? Don't just blame external factors or bad luck, right? Dig deep, and
Mhm.
honestly assess your role in the situation. Second, what can I learn from this experience? Every failure contains a lesson, but we have to be willing to look for it. And third, how can I apply this lesson to improve my approach in the future? Failure can be a powerful catalyst for growth if we use it as an opportunity to refine our strategy.
Those are such powerful questions. They
Right.
shift the focus from blame and self-criticism, to learning and growth.
Exactly. It's about turning those failures into valuable data points that help you chart a more effective course,
Hmm.
towards your goals.
This makes me think about all the times I've given up on something,
Mm.
because it felt too hard, or I encountered too many obstacles. What if I had seen those setbacks as opportunities for learning and growth, instead of reasons to quit.
Right. It's a shift in perspective, isn't it?
Hmm.
He'll believe that by developing the habit of seeing failure as feedback, we can actually accelerate our progress towards success.
I love that. It's like turning those stumbling blocks into stepping stones. But it sounds like it takes a conscious effort to reframe our thinking in this way.
Yeah.
It does. It does. And he emphasizes the importance of self-control in this process. When we encounter failure, it's easy to let our emotions get the best of us, to give in to discouragement and give up. But he'll reminds us that we have the power to choose how we respond to challenges.
Yeah.
We can let them defeat us, or we can use them as fuel for growth.
So it's not about suppressing our emotions, but about mastering them, about choosing a more, a more
Yes.
more empowering response.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that failure is not the end of the story.
Yeah.
It's just a plot twist. And often those plot twists, they lead to even greater triumphs in the end.
This is making me appreciate the depth and the interconnectedness of Hill's philosophy. It's not just a collection of self-help tips, but it's a comprehensive framework for navigating life's ups and downs in a way that maximizes our potential for success.
Exactly. And while we've been focusing, primarily on the mental and emotional aspects of success, Hill also emphasizes, the importance of taking concrete action. He believed that knowledge without action is
Yeah.
useless.
Right. You can't just sit around and think positive thoughts. You have to get out there and make things happen.
Precisely. And this brings us to one of his most, I think, practical and yet often overlooked principles.
Huh.
The habit of doing more than paid for.
Right. We touched on this a little bit earlier. It's about going above and beyond, what's expected. But why did Hill believe, it was so important?
Well, he believed that by consistently exceeding expectations, we tap into this hidden law of increasing returns. he argued that the more, the more we give, the more we receive.
Yeah.
Both in terms of tangible rewards, and in terms of personal growth and satisfaction.
So it's like a virtuous cycle. The more we contribute,
Right.
the more we gain, which then motivates us to contribute even more.
Exactly. And he emphasized, that this principle applies to all areas of life, not just to, to our careers, whether we're interacting with family, with friends, with colleagues, or even strangers, by making a conscious effort to give more, than we expect, to receive. We create a ripple effect of positivity that ultimately benefits everyone.
Yeah. That's a beautiful concept. It's like shifting the focus from what can I get to what can I give.
Precisely. And he believed that this shift in perspective is not only the key to success, but also to genuine happiness and fulfillment.
It's like that old saying, it's better to give than to receive, but Hill takes it. He takes it a step further by showing us how that act of giving actually creates this cycle of abundance, that comes back to us in unexpected ways.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to another key principle we discussed earlier.
Mhm.
Enthusiasm. Remember, Hill believed that enthusiasm is contagious and essential for influencing others.
Right. It's like that spark that ignites action and inspires those around us. But how does enthusiasm tie into this idea of giving more than we receive?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, think about it. When you're genuinely enthusiastic about something, you naturally want to share that passion. You want to share that passion with others. You go above and beyond because it brings you joy. It brings you fulfillment.
So enthusiasm isn't just about getting what you want, but it's about sharing. It's about sharing your passion and inspiring others to join you on the journey.
Precisely. Hill believed that true enthusiasm comes from a place of genuine service.
Yeah.
From a desire to make a positive difference in the world.
This is making me think about all the times I've been hesitant to to fully express my enthusiasm for fear of being judged, or coming across as too eager. What if I've been dimming my light without even realizing it?
It's a common fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Hill, he would argue that by holding back our enthusiasm, we're actually doing ourselves and the world a disservice.
So it's about embracing our passion and letting it shine through.
Yeah.
Even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first.
Exactly, because that authentic enthusiasm, it's magnetic.
Mhm.
It draws people in. And it inspires them. It inspires them to action.
This is making me want to reevaluate how I approach my work, my relationships. Even just my everyday interactions.
Yeah.
Am I bringing enough enthusiasm to the table? Am I inspiring those around me?
Yeah, those are great questions to reflect on, and as you do, remember that enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is a skill that can be cultivated.
Yeah.
Just like any other.
Yeah.
It starts with identifying what truly excites you. And then finding ways to share that passion with the world.
Okay. I'm feeling inspired. But let's shift gears. Shift gears for a moment and revisit another key principle that underpins everything we've discussed so far, and that is accurate thinking. We talk about how it's about using all the powers of the mind to process information
Yeah.
effectively and strategically. But you mentioned that there are also obstacles to accurate thinking, right?
Yes, there are, and one of the most insidious obstacles, according to Hill, is intolerance. He believed that intolerance closes the mind, pushing reason, logic, and facts to the background.
intolerance, how does that hinder accurate thinking?
Well, think about it. When you're intolerant of other viewpoints, you're essentially shutting yourself off from, potentially valuable information and
Yeah,
perspectives.
yeah, yeah.
It's like putting on, blinders that prevent you from, from seeing the full picture.
Yeah, I can see how that could lead to, biased thinking and
Uh,
poor decision making. You're so focused on, defending, your own viewpoint that you miss out on you miss out on the opportunity to learn and grow from others.
exactly. And he'll observe that intolerance often goes hand in hand with another mental trap, revenge. He argued that these two negative emotions, they tend to feed off of each other, creating a vicious cycle that clouds judgment and leads to destructive behavior.
Yeah. It's like, those emotions, they hijack your rational your rational mind, causing you to act impulsively rather than thoughtfully.
Precisely, and closely linked to revenge, he identified greed as another major obstacle to accurate thinking. He believed that greed distorts our perception of reality, making us prioritize short-term gains over long-term consequences.
Yeah, it's like getting so caught up in acquiring, more that you lose sight of what truly matters. It can lead to unethical behavior. It can lead to, broken relationships and ultimately a deep sense of emptiness.
Exactly. And he'll believe that all of these mental traps, intolerance, revenge, and greed, they're ultimately rooted in a lack of self-control.
Wow.
He argued that mastering our emotions is essential for cultivating a clear and discerning mind.
It's like self-control. It's the foundation for all the other principles that we've discussed. It allows us to harness, our enthusiasm to persevere through challenges, to make sound decisions and ultimately create the life we desire.
You're getting it.
Yeah.
He'll believe that self-control is the master key that unlocks all the other doors to success.
So how do we develop, this all important self-control?
He provides a number of practical, techniques and exercises for cultivating self-control,
Mhm.
which I think we can delve into, further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay. Okay. I'm eager to learn more about those techniques. But for now, I'm struck by the interconnectedness of all of these principles. It's like Hill is providing a blueprint for not just achieving success, but for living a truly fulfilling and meaningful life.
That's a beautiful way to put it, and I think that's what makes Hill's work so timeless and relevant. It's not just about getting rich or achieving fame, but it's about becoming the best becoming the best version of ourselves,
Yeah.
and using our talents to make a positive impact on the world.
I couldn't agree more. This has been, such an enlightening conversation so far. Can't wait to see what other gems, we uncover in part 3. Okay, I'm so ready to continue our exploration of Hill's, principles. We've been unpacking so much wisdom already, and I know there's still more to discover. Where do we go from here?
Well, let's circle back to something we touched on, earlier. The importance of having definite chief aim. Remember, Hill believed this was the starting point for all great achievement.
Right. It's about having that crystal clear vision, right, of what you want to achieve, something that truly sets your soul on fire. But I think, a lot of people struggle with this. How do you even begin to define that one all-consuming goal, that definite chief aim that will drive you forward?
Right. Yeah, it's a journey of self-discovery, isn't it?
Yeah.
He'll believe that our definite chief aim should be deeply personal,
Yeah.
something that resonates with our core values and aspirations. He wouldn't tell you what your aim, should be,
Hmm.
but he would guide you towards finding it within yourself.
So it's about looking inward, rather
Yeah.
than outward, about connecting with your authentic self.
Exactly. It's about, asking yourself some tough questions. What do you most, passionate about? What kind of, what kind of impact do you want to make? Do you want to make on the world? What legacy do you want to, to leave behind?
Those are some big questions. It can it can feel overwhelming to even think about them, let alone answer them.
Yeah. Well, it's a process.
Yeah.
It's not a destination.
Yeah.
And Hill suggested taking some time for quiet reflection, for journaling, for connecting with your intuition. He believed that the answers, the answers are already within you, waiting to be uncovered.
So it's about, silencing the noise of the outside world and tuning into that inner voice, that inner wisdom.
Precisely. And once you've identified that burning desire, that definite chief aim that speaks to your soul, he'll provide specific steps for bringing it to life.
Okay. Tell me more. How do we turn that dream into a reality?
Well, he recommends writing down your definite chief aim in clear, concise, language.
Yeah.
Make it a tangible declaration, a commitment to yourself, and then, read aloud twice a day,
Yeah.
once in the morning and once at night with full emotion and belief.
It sounds like we're back to the idea of planting, planting those seeds in the subconscious mind, But this time it's the seed of our ultimate goal, our life's purpose.
Exactly. It's about aligning your conscious mind, with your subconscious mind, creating this powerful synergy, that propels you towards your dreams. And as you read your definite chief aim, visualize yourself already living that reality. Feel the emotions, feel the emotions that you would feel if you had, if you'd already achieved it,
Yeah.
the joy, the fulfillment, the sense of accomplishment.
So it's about, embodying that. That future self, feeling it in every fiber of your being.
Precisely. He'll believe that the more vividly you can imagine and feel your desired outcome, the more likely it is, to manifest in your life.
Okay. I'm definitely gonna, start incorporating this practice into my daily, routine. It's like giving my subconscious mind a clear roadmap to follow. But what about those inevitable setbacks and challenges, that we all face on the road to success? How do we stay motivated when things, when things get tough?
Right. Well, that's where Hill's, insights on failure, become so valuable. Remember, he believed that failure, it's not the opposite of success, but a crucial part of the journey.
Right. It's about seeing those setbacks as opportunities, for learning and growth, about extracting the wisdom that they contain. But it's, it's easier said than done, isn't it? It can be, so discouraging to hit a roadblock,
Yeah.
especially, when you've put your heart and soul into something.
It is. But Hill reminds us that we have the power to choose how we respond,
Yeah.
to those challenges. We can let them,
Yeah.
we can let them defeat us, or we can use them, as fuel for growth. And he suggests asking ourselves 3 key questions, after every setback.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to take notes again. What are the questions?
All right. So first, ask yourself what caused the failure. Don't just point fingers or blame external factors. Take ownership of your role.
Hmm.
In the situation, and then and then ask, what can I learn from this experience?
Yeah.
Every failure contains a valuable lesson, but we have to be willing to look for it. And finally,
Yeah.
ask, how can I apply this lesson to improve my approach in the future?
Yeah.
Failure can be a powerful catalyst for growth
Yeah.
if we use it as an opportunity to refine our strategy.
Those questions are so powerful. They shift the focus from, from blame and self-criticism to learning and growth.
Precisely. It's about turning those failures into valuable data points that help you navigate more effectively towards your goals.
It's like that saying, fall 7 times, stand up 8. But Hill, he gives us a framework for not just getting back up, but for using those falls to learn and grow.
Exactly. And remember, the ability to remain calm and analytical in the face of,
Yeah.
in the face of challenges. It's a testament to the power of self-control.
Self-control really does, seem to be the linchpin that holds everything together. It allows us to harness our enthusiasm, to persevere through setbacks, to make sound decisions, and ultimately to create the life we desire.
You're absolutely right. He'll believe that self-control is the master key, that unlocks all the other doors to success. And he actually dedicated an entire chapter, to this principle, outlining specific techniques and exercises for cultivating this essential quality. He talks about the importance of mastering our thoughts, understanding and redirecting our negative emotions, and cultivating a positive mental attitude.
It sounds like a lifelong journey. A continuous process of self-discovery and self-mastery.
It is. But Hill believed that this journey is the most rewarding one.
Yeah.
That you can embark on. He saw self-control as the key to unlocking not just material success, but a life of purpose, of meaning and of fulfillment.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And one of the most inspiring, I think, aspects of Hill's work is his unwavering belief, in the power of the individual. He truly believed that anyone, regardless of their background or their circumstances, could achieve great things if they understood and applied the right principles.
I couldn't agree more. He was a champion.
Yeah.
A champion for the underdog. For those who dared to dream big. And we're willing to put in the work to make those dreams a reality.
Well said. And as we've been diving into Hill's wisdom, I've been struck by how timeless and relevant his principles are. It's like it's like he tapped into something universal.
Wow.
Something that transcends time and circumstance.
He did.
Yeah.
He did, and I think that's why his work continues to resonate with people.
Yeah.
Today, nearly a century after it was written.
Yeah.
His principles are as powerful and as applicable now as they were then.
Absolutely. We've covered so many of his key insights today, from the importance of a definite chief aim and the power of the mastermind, to the transformative power of going the extra mile, and the magic of enthusiasm.
And let's not forget the importance of accurate thinking, of cultivating a discerning mind, that can sift through the noise and identify what's truly valuable.
Right. In a world that's in a world that's constantly bombarding us with information, Hill's advice on accurate thinking is more relevant than ever.
Absolutely. It's about, becoming the CEO of your own mind, taking control of your thoughts and directing them towards your goals.
This has been such a rich and insightful, deep dive into Napoleon Hill's The Law of Success. It's given me so much to think about, and even more to put into practice. What a gift to have access to this kind of kind of wisdom.
It is a gift. And remember, remember the true value of Hill's,
Right.
Hill's work. It lies not just in reading it, but in applying,
Hmm.
applying its principles to your own life.
So before we sign off, I want to challenge you, dear listener, to choose one principle from this deep dive that truly resonated with you. One that you feel could make a real difference in your life.
Write it down,
Yeah.
reflect on it, and most importantly, take action, commit, commit to taking one concrete step this week, to put that principle into practice.
Remember, even small steps taken consistently, they can lead to remarkable results. He'll believe that success is a journey, it's not a destination. And the most important thing is to keep moving forward, one step at a time towards the life that you were meant to live. Thanks for joining us, on this deep dive.